Welcome back to The Middle Ground. I'm your host, Key, and we're reporting live from the Honey Queen Juice Bar. Welcome back to The Middle Ground. Okay, so therapy. Now, I'm sure you guys can imagine coming out of this pandemic with 2020 being how it was, 2021, and now 2022, we went through a lot. You know, a lot of our freedoms were taken from us. A lot of things were changed. We have to deal with these mask mandates. We have to deal with these vaccine mandates. It's a lot. And, you know, for many of us, this is our first time experiencing a pandemic. So it affected us. I know for me, you know, I was affected in various ways. I cut my hair, gained some weight, lost some weight, and just experienced a lot of different things. I know a lot of different friends. Unfortunately, some people didn't make it, you know, so it's a lot. And a lot of people became closer and connected with therapy. We know that Charlemagne the God has been known in the last few years, has been one of the more popular voices telling people, and especially black men, to go to therapy and to invest in their mental health. And I am someone who I'm a firm believer in therapy, and in speaking to someone, I've seen it personally change the closest people who I love. They rave about the positive benefits of therapy. So let's talk about it. The importance of therapy. The importance of taking care of your mental health. How do you guys take care of your mental health? Why is therapy important to you? Is therapy important to you? Yeah.
Therapy is very important.
Therapy is very important.
No, actually,
Sexual therapy.
I worked in
Sorry.
massage therapy.
Oh,
No, therapy is important. I worked in the social service field with at-risk youth for a while, so we would have them do therapy. They did their therapy, whatever. So I kind of had some issues a little later on, and my primary care physician suggested I go to therapy. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. So I ended up going to therapy, and it was like 6 sessions. I was a little reluctant first couple of sessions. Third session opened up. By the end, the 6th session, I'm like, can I get some more sessions? Like, therapy is real. Like, so much came out, and it's just real. Like, therapy is real. I love therapy. I'm not in therapy currently, but I'm looking to get back into therapy, but I definitely suggest therapy for our people.
So this black man believes in therapy.
Definitely, for sure.
Awesome. What about you?
I have mixed feelings about therapy. On the one hand, I think that it is very important that we, as the most historically traumatized people in this country, find positive and effective ways and tools to deal with our trauma. However, I think that it's equally important that we vet and are very intentional about who our therapists are.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's something that can set someone back very far in their journey. You know, as you said, you work with at-risk youth. Like, the wrong therapist,
Yes.
a therapist who came in already prejudiced, right? It can really mess you up. But I've definitely gone through therapy. I do recommend therapy. I recommend alternative forms of therapy. Personally, I think that hypnotherapy is one of the most powerful tools that we as people have. And hypnotherapy is essentially a guided meditation through your subconscious. It's storytelling with you in control. And we as a people, historically, we're fantastic storytellers. We're imaginative, we got all of that. And so if you have someone who's able to walk you through these phases of going through the levels of yourself, addressing these issues that come up with that, and then providing you with the tools to move forward, I think that's super effective. But at the end of the day, I don't believe that anyone should stay in therapy forever. And I think that therapy should provide you with tools to cope with your life so that you can move forward into a better quality of life. And oftentimes I think people either get stuck with a bad therapist, or they get stuck in this cycle of, I need to have therapy because I need to have someone who listens to me. Which is not...
We need a friend.
I need a friend. Well, not even a friend. Some things you don't need to tell everybody.
True.
Sometimes...
But they try to make their therapist their friend.
You try to make your therapist your friend, and sometimes you would rather talk about your issues and your situation to avoid having to actually do the internal work, which is sitting with yourself and dealing with that. So, yes, therapy, but be very particular about how you go about it, I would say.
Okay.
think that I'm my best therapist because I think out loud, and I'm a Virgo, so I'm very analytical. So I'm always thinking and critiquing ways to better myself. But recently I have a disability, so I recently joined a support group where I'm talking to random strangers about their disabilities and things that hinder them, and basically it helps out a lot.
Yeah.
That's a form of therapy.
So I like what he said in that he's his own best therapist.
Yeah.
And then went on to express how he has these tools in his life, but he's the one who makes it work.
Yeah.
Like I think that's really profound.
I like that too. I do. And I like what you said is that I don't think that you should be staying in therapy forever. And that it seems like that happens where people have been in therapy for like 3-4 years. Like, yeah, and it's just like, well, whoa, okay. You're still dealing with that. But like you said, there should be a transition phase where you kind of go through things, and like you said, you get those tools and you come out. And for me, I think that therapy goes from therapy to just general self-care. Right. I think that's what therapy kind of morphs into once you leave the therapist's office. Is just, what is your methods of self-care? How do you love on you on a day-to-day basis? I know for me, it's all about nature. For me, like, I am my best self when I am hiking under the sun, or when I'm in the mountains. I'm taking my clothes off, I'm getting naked, I'm like, I don't worry about what I do out there in the mountains, you know what I mean? But it's just like, that's when I am my best self. And for me, that is communion, because that is God, that is nature, that is oneness, that is power, and that is your grounding. You're walking the earth barefoot, and it is, for me, there's nothing more beautiful than that. I mean, there's a few other things. It's just so amazing to be that, and that's really what it is. It's just self-care, and like she said, mindfulness, meditation. And I'm just happy that the conversation, whether we even have these conversations, because there was a time when, like, you say you was going to therapy, girl, you crazy? What you, I mean, like, you were immediately stigmatized, you were immediately demonized, people was looking at you crazy, like, but now it's like, no, I'm going to therapy. And it's just like, and people are, I have a really good friend, he always say, how's your mental health? And I'm like, yo, that just feels so good. Instead of typical, how you doing? He says, how's your mental health? Yeah. And I tell him, I'm like, I really appreciate that, because I really have to stop and think. Like, when people say, how are you? You just say some, I'm good. You don't think about that shit. You're probably dying on the inside. You probably like literally are just, but if somebody say, how's your mental health? You gotta think about that. You gotta check in and say, well, damn, how is my mental health? And it makes you check in. So just those things like that, we absolutely need to continue to adopt those things in our community. Go ahead.
How deep should we go with our therapists? Because I heard you say something, and I was kind of wondering about that, because I have some friends who do therapy, and it's like they became friends with the therapist, kind of like you said, and then I talk to them outside of that, and to me, they're not even really addressing what they need to be unpacking. So
because they become friends with the therapist?
Well, I mean, I don't know exactly why, but it's like, to me, I look at it as you should be unpacking some stuff with the therapist. If it's the right therapist, you're comfortable, you should be going deep, somewhat deep.
Right.
Well, I think it's also important to note that there is no requirement that you deal with your own trauma in order to be a therapist.
Right.
Always boundaries.
There's no requirement that you have dealt with your own trauma in order to get that therapist license. You can be messed up and be a therapist. Right. So, and also, that, like, trauma attracts its mate. So whatever form of trauma that you riding with,
that was
probably
dirty.
gonna
say that again.
That's scary.
That just made me wince. What did you just say about me?
I'm just saying.
And that's
right. Trauma attracts its mate. That's why I said, like, you got to be careful about what type of therapist you're dealing with. Not just because these therapists out here messed up and they mess with people, but like, if someone's life is not together, how are they going to tell you about how to get your life together? And also,
Evan Samuels apparently no.
Well, right. Let's not drop no names. You don't have to. Yeah. But I think the starting point, the most important place that we as a community could be, is the willingness to admit that we as an individual, I do not have all the answers, and being willing to seek out another solution to the issue that I'm facing. And I think that the fundamental bottom line that you need in order to go to therapy is you need to make a commitment to yourself that you are willing to deal with the truth. because otherwise it's just all a waste, and it all becomes a scaffold to hold up this shell of a persona that you're trying to put out there without really actually doing any real work.
You can't handle the truth.
Right. And sometimes you can't.
Right.
And sometimes that's the truth.
Right.
But can you say that? You know, and maybe you don't want to say those things to the people who are closest to you. Maybe the people who are closest to you are part of the reason that you have the trauma in the first place. But if you're not willing to be honest with yourself, then there's no point in doing any of these things, because you're just going to be spinning your gears.
Right.
That was a good question. You said though, like how deep do you go?
Yeah.
It's like, but you have to trust the person you're going deep with, because this is sensitive information that they could in turn around and use against you.
Right.
Right.
So you gotta be careful for one. You have to trust them too.
And I was always under the assumption that with your therapist, you're supposed to go deep. So in my first session, I'm not real trusting. So I'm like, in my second session, I'm like, okay. By the third session, I'm like, okay, she cool. You know, I'm laid back. So I went deep. By like the fourth and fifth, I'm telling everything. Like,
I love the progression. I love the progression.
Yeah, I was all in. I mean, I was talking to her about some real deep stuff that I never really got to speak to anybody about. Like, I mean, my grandmother passed away. She was murdered when I was young, and I never spoke to anybody about this. I was there when it happened.
Yeah.
I was like 6 years old, and therapy wasn't.
Yeah.
So I never talked to anyone about this. So this was the first time I ever talked to anyone about it. And I found out I needed to get that out. Like,
absolutely.
you know,
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it was major. It was major. And that's why I felt so good after. Like, yeah, when is the next session? Can I get in here again? You know, so, you know.
Yeah, and I think that how deep, I think that not everything needs to be said in therapy. Because again, like, this person is there to give you tools. You should definitely go as deep as you need to, especially when there's things that you need to address. But like I said, I also think sometimes it can become a crutch where it's just like, well, something else happened today. Let me tell you what happened today. It's like, no. Did you breathe? Did you do those breathing techniques we talked about? Because you shouldn't be back over here with me with that same stuff.
Right.
At the same time, I think that it's important for us to understand that it's okay for us to have feelings. We're allowed to. It's okay. You can be angry, you can be mad, you can be sad, you can be all of these things. You're allowed to, and that's part of the human experience. And therapy is just a tool to guide you through this human experience in a way that doesn't cause you to self-destruct, that doesn't destroy your quality of life. So there are some things that, yeah, we need to talk about this. We need to get through it. But also, there's some stuff that even after you talk about it, you still gotta sit with it. You still gotta do that work to actually get through it. And I say, I know when I'm healed from something, when I can talk about it and it doesn't bother me. I don't feel embarrassed. I can tell you.
You don't have an emotional
attachment to it. When I was in the fourth grade, I was at PE. I pissed my pants. I had a bladder infection. The PE coach would not let me go to the bathroom. I peed all over myself, and it was the most embarrassing thing that I thought had happened to me at that point in time. Right?
A few times.
Right. Right. And it was traumatic. It was really traumatic. You know, all the kids was looking, people was laughing. I felt horrible about myself. My self-esteem went down, all of that. But I know that I'm healed from it because I can sit here and talk about it today, and I don't got no tears coming from the back. You know, it's something that happened. That was
part of your story.
That was unfortunate that I went through. And the worst things that you think have happened to you, the very worst things that you think are just so horrible, that's part of your victory story. All of the people that we admire, that we look up to as our heroes, they all had these terrible things, tragic past that happened to them, and they overcame them. And if we didn't understand that they came through those things, we wouldn't revere them as much as we do.
Okay, so we have discussed the importance of therapy. So what would you guys say are some very quick solutions that we can get into to basically help our community move into having a more positive perspective on therapy? Like I said, thankfully, we're already kind of moving in the right direction because it's becoming more normalized to talk about it, to say that, hey, I have a therapy session or I'm going to therapy. We see those BetterHelp ads all over Instagram all the time, right? So it is becoming more normalized. So what are some solutions that we can do to continue to push it and to keep therapy, keep that importance in our community?
Advertising.
Continue to advertise it. Absolutely. That's true, because I think that with those BetterHelp ads been on IG, that did make it more accessible to people. They can just click a button right there, and if they are having thoughts or if they're having feelings, they can just sign up. So access.
Word of mouth encouraging the family and friends.
That too. Personal word of mouth and encouragement. Okay. All right.
And if we know of good therapists, let our friends know. I know a great therapist.
Share a therapist
She's great.
resources.
Yeah, you gotta share the resources.
Share the therapy resources. All right.
I think also acknowledging as a community that we are historically the most traumatized people on the face of this, on this continent and in this country, and understanding what that means, that I've got trauma, you got trauma, you got trauma, you got trauma, your mama got trauma, your daddy got trauma, your granddaddy got trauma, your grandmama got trauma, and understanding that our elders even have trauma that has been unvoiced to us. Having compassion for that, but also encouraging them to share what they've gone through.
Compassion. I just have to echo that sentiment, because we have to have more compassion for one another. You know, I remember my first job was at In-N-Out Burger. I was 16 years old, and I will never forget this. My godmom, I love her to pieces, and she would always tell me, she was an older lady, and she would always tell me, Akia, be kind. Just be kind to people, she said, because you never knew what people was going through before they interacted with you. She was like, you work this drive-through, people are rude, they're assholes, and that. She was like, you don't know. And I was like, what? I was like, well, what that have to do with me? She was like, put yourself in their shoes and just turn it around. What if it were you and you were having a janky day and you happen to come in contact with somebody? Wouldn't somebody's kindness and their sweetness and their niceness and wisdom ask you, how's your day? Wouldn't that just make it so much better for you? Low-key, it would. So I just had to echo that. Thank you. Just compassion is just so important in our community. Just realizing, like you said, everybody's going through something, and I need to work on this myself because I am terrible at this. I am very, in my opinion, I could be very, I don't know the word, but I have to be more patient with people, more patient and understanding to what people can be, come with people's possibilities and what they can be going through. It's a little ghetto, huh?
You're a little snappy.
I'm a
little snappy.
I'm a little snappy.
A little snappy.
I am a little snappy.
Yeah, I seen your chart.
I gotta go to therapy.
I know how that Capricorn is.
Okay, I think that's a wrap. That was a good one.